Is being recorded.
Welcome to the OpenJ9 community call for March 11th. If you haven't already, please add your name and company affiliation to the meeting minutes. So we do have some ideas for some lightning talks. Hopefully we'll get that organized in the future. Nothing scheduled right now. I have looked at the user-raised issues. I'll just open them quickly. I made sure that everything is assigned to the next release, 020. It doesn't mean that they're going to be resolved in that release, but we'll do what we can and then move everything else out. There was an issue raised about supporting Java 11 Windows 32-bit, which Dan has been talking to. I mean, updating the issue with some comments. Next up, the download trends. Anything new there?
I'm just doing the new ones at the moment, but so we can come back to those if you want.
Okay. So the 019 release, January for Java 14, we declared milestone 2 earlier this week and did the builds, and the milestone 2 builds are now available. They've been announced on the OpenJ9 Slack, and Dan has tweeted them out. I think the only thing we're waiting for, I guess there was no problems. There were no issues opened, so there must have been no problems in the adopt builds.
We actually had some issues with the disk space on the Jenkins server to adopt, so we've been firefighting that a bit. So the JDK builds are up, but the scripts to produce JREs hadn't been updated for JDK 14, so we've done that now. So the next builds should start including those. So the reason I'm saying that is we haven't poured through all of the test results yet. The milestone build went up anyway, just because the builds are completed. But I was watching them while they were happening. I didn't notice anything untoward that we hadn't already seen going on already.
Okay, so if we don't have anything raised that we're going to be planning on fixing, then I think we could create the OpenJ9 final tags, and then we need a legal file added on the extension side. I think we could go ahead and make the final builds in advance of March 17th and just wait to publish them after Oracle publishes theirs.
Yeah, the legal file is my next job on my list.
So Simon, if you could let me know when the triage is completed, and if there's nothing we need to do, I'll just create the final tags on OpenJ9.
Yeah, sounds good.
So just to give status on the JEP work, all the JEP work was completed except for 358, I think it was. Better information about null pointer exceptions, but that's a feature that is not enabled by default in Java 14. You'd have to turn it on via an option, and we do have some work in progress, and we hope to get that into the 020 release. It ships in April. So next up is the 020 release. We have done the code split for that on Monday. We created the tags for milestone 1, and the next action there is to create the branches of the extensions repo. You can just take the latest content from OpenJ9. And then we should do some milestone 1 builds and see how we stand for 020.
Yes, that's fine.
So next up is the adopt update. Anybody have news for the adopt update? I don't see Shelley on the call, and she usually does that part. If not, we'll move on. Adam, is there anything new for machines?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think all the ARX machines are back in the pool now. I
Yeah.
think there was an issue with wget that Joe's investigating. Other than that, I think they're good, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I think might be a problem just when running wget inside Jenkins. If you run it outside of Jenkins, it works fine.
Yeah. Not sure why they mix using wget on some things and curl on others, but the Red Hat 7 machines, there were a bunch of failures with Git. I opened a pull request to help with that because there was a small bug with one of the scripts. But
So a pull request that you just opened?
yes,
Okay.
the last half hour
All right. Great.
to put the reference repos on them. So that'll help. But if they're just slow network perf, we either really need to try and restart them or raise the issue with Marist. See if they can see anything obvious on their side.
Yeah, I've been restarting. Last night, lots and lots of jobs failed, and I tried to restart them all, and they kept failing. And I suspect most of the builds didn't run on ZLinux last night.
Okay. Other than that, the new server's almost ready to go at Unity. I have it installed and finished the pipeline changes, so now I'm just finished testing it in production, as it were.
Sounds great.
Hopefully that'll be in soon. Joe is bugging me, just one sec. Oh, yeah, we could go back to the Ubuntu 16 machines if we needed to, but
Well, they were working fine up till last night. Maybe not perfectly. Like sometimes you would get a machine that stopped responding, but it would reboot itself and come back online again. And all that was required was to restart that one build.
have we still been seeing the compiles kernel panic though?
Yeah, maybe not as much, but there's still been a few. I just stopped reporting them.
Okay. That might cause us to roll back, or we could maybe ask Maris to downgrade our kernel version or something.
Yeah, at Adopt, I've still got one machine that's running the old kernel version. It's actually installed the new one, but it hasn't rebooted yet, and that's still stable as far as I can tell.
If we could roll back, that would be good, but it doesn't always impact the nightly builds. I mean, Monday night, the builds went through very well. I think everything was green pretty much.
Sir, do you have the version that is working in the issue?
I think it's in the Adopt issue. I'm not sure if you're talking about a different one at OpenJ9.
Well, whatever issue there is, I can't remember what it was.
Yep.
As long as we can find it somewhere.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think that's it for machine updates.
Yep.
There's the website. Is anybody on who could talk about the website? I don't think so. Which takes us to any other business. Does anyone have any other business they'd like to discuss? Shelley.
Hello.
Hello, Shelley. I think you just joined.
I did.
All right, we'll back up a little. Go back to adopt update, see if there's anything you want to talk about.
I don't think there's anything that I'll call out directly here. If people have mentioned, I think we flagged the AR64 triage effort that's underway at the moment. So we'll only keep, I haven't these notes, by the way. We'll only keep the last 2 test runs worth of artifacts, just so we don't bulk things up at the server. We are still planning to move test artifacts off the master server, but there's discussion on whether we use Artifactory or some other storage. So that hasn't been decided yet, but going forward, you won't be going to the actual Jenkins jobs attached files. They'll be just like we have at OpenJ9, a link that'll take you to the artifacts for people who are triaging.
So on that subject, Shelley, I was talking to Stuart earlier, and Stuart's given me some useful commands for finding old large output that I might be able to purge. Things like, for example, old OpenJDK Sanity tests from nightly JDK 12 builds and things like that.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy if we do that for sure. Do you want to take that action?
Yes, I was going to do that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great.
Just to try and give us a bit of buffer for next week.
Yeah, and I guess in relation to all of this, it was mentioned earlier today in a smaller group of people, we'll be beefing up. We have a class that's run at the start of every system test run, but it's actually part of Test Kit Gen. It's called Machine Info. We'll be adding some extra capabilities to that so that we can check that the machine we're about to run tests on is more sane, at which point if that sanity test of the actual machine fails, including whether or not there's enough space on the machine to run the tests that we have, then we'll abort. And this way we're hoping to be able to shorten the time for triaging things, because that would immediately indicate an infra issue. On the same note, at the end of a test run, we're going to be doing a very hard purge of the temp directory, because there are some OpenJDK tests that appear to be pushing cores into temp if things go poorly. Normally, they create them in a scratch folder inside the workspace and then move them up into another folder inside the workspace, but we've found a couple cases where that's not true. So we'll be more aggressive about cleanup and hoping that that will help eliminate some of the problems that we're seeing. I think that's all I'll flag for now, though. We have one last thing. We did create a GitHub action called Run Aqua Tests, and I'd like to talk about creating an action to build OpenJ9 so that we can offer to OpenJ9 developers an easy way for them to do PR testing right within their GitHub repos. But I guess I'll bring that up maybe at a call next week with a brief demo. That's it.
Stuart, I think you had questions about AR64. Hopefully those were all answered. We did the system tests and the OpenJDK tests at OpenJ9, and then the people working on AR64 are looking at those results and running on their own machines, doing triage and getting fixes in for those problems.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just I think you're not running them regularly through CI. Then you just kind of did a one-off. Is that right?
Right, because there's so many failures. There's no point in running them regularly. We'd like to run them when they're greener, but we're waiting for that triage effort to fix the problems or exclude the tests that shouldn't be running. AR64 doesn't cover the full set of GC policies. I think there's no ballot support, there's no concurrent scavenger support, so any test for that, for those things, needs to be included.
And just as a note, Kano has been going through the playlists and updating them. So just this morning, we merged a change to exclude some of the synthetic workload tests that use a balanced GC. So Kano and Daryl, I believe, are actively triaging. Daryl sent me an email last week, and I gave them kind of a summary of where things were at, so they know where to go for seeing whether their updates are good. And I think they are now running stuff locally. Well,
Cool, that sounds good. Shelley, are they looking at the Adopt OpenJDK results?
yes.
Or from someone else? Okay, cool.
Yeah, because there's actually only the one machine at OpenJ9, and I am not sure that there's any on the internal Jenkins server. So we've agreed several months ago that we would run them here unless there was some strong reason not to, like it's taking up too much space. But I think the solution you came up with, Stuart, is a good one, which is
It should be okay, yeah, it just limits it, caps the amount that it will keep, so that's fine.
So I added a note to the 020 release write-up. We do want to get a build for AR64 out. We have branched for the 020 release, and AR64 is obviously not ready in advance of the branch, but we're going to play it by ear. Since the changes for AR64 don't really affect anything else other than AR64, we might put those in to the release stream late. Or if it seems like it's not going to be ready for the 020 release, we could consider a 021 release after the fact, just to get AR64 out there. So we'll just see how it goes about what we're going to do there.
yeah.
Andrew Leonard, did you have anything you wanted to say about the download stats?
I have updated them, and there's not a lot of change, to be honest. It's a continuation of the direction it was going.
Yeah, it looks like we had a downturn and it's starting to trend upward again in some of the graphs.
Yeah. So.
Which is good.
Yes.
I did remember one other thing, Peter. Someone came into the OpenJ9 Slack channels this morning with a query about Docker images and the fact that there has not been a new set updated in a long time in the nightlies. I've added I've added what I think is the underlying issue to the top priorities list at Adopt, for someone to escalate getting those images published more regularly. I think they were using a OpenJ9 in a UBI container, and that hadn't been published. The last one had been published 3 weeks ago.
Okay, that's great news that we're prioritizing getting that fixed.
Yeah. I'll follow up next week in this call.
There were a couple of people who joined late, so did you have any questions that you didn't hear the answers to, or anything to cover under any other business? Otherwise, I think we're done. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, bye.